Hi, I'm Eric Lustgarten, and thank you for checking out the Apprenda Cloud Platform on the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. Today, I'm going to walk you through a very simple demo lab that will give you an idea of what the Apprenda capabilities are. Before we get started, and hopefully you saw the introductory video, but if not, I'll give a quick refresher. The Apprenda Cloud Platform is a application container platform that allows IT organizations to offer developer self-service and very easy to deploy and manage your custom-built applications, whether you're bringing in traditional existing applications written in some maybe not cloud-friendly architectures or languages to your cloud-native or containerized applications. Apprenda makes the deployment and the modernizations of these applications and the management very simple and straightforward. It's all about simplicity and trivializing the deployment of these applications with the best-of-breed proven technologies. In this demo, you'll get the ability to create an account on the Apprenda environment, deploy a sample application or more if you wish to, and then scale it, try it around, and see what Apprenda, get a feel for what Apprenda offers you. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to go to apps.oracle.apprendalabs.com/developer. So I'll go ahead and put that here. And that will take you to the Apprenda login page. Now you'll go ahead and create a development team account, fill out the information. Now make sure that you remember your email address and password because you'll use that to log in after if you sign out from the demo. And your organization name is going to be your account name. You might have, if you put something like Oracle, you're probably going to have someone else that has that name. So just make sure you pick something that is unique to you, and the platform will let you know whether it's already in use or not. In this case, I already have an account, so I'm going to go ahead and log in with my account. And we're going to go ahead and get started. So once you log in, the Apprenda platform has multiple ways of interacting from a developer's point of view. You can use the graphical user interface or the developer portal, which is what we're going to use for this demo, or you can use a command line interface, REST API. There's a lot of different ways of deploying an application on the Apprenda platform, integrating with your build system, and et cetera. In this case, we'll use the UI, the developer portal, to deploy the application. And we've made available a collection of applications here, sample apps that you can use for the demonstration. And they're all located in the apprenda.com/for/POC or POC portal. This will give you, there's walkthroughs, there's different value proposition and case studies, introduction, videos, and a link to our documentation and GitHub page. And you can see some tutorials and sample application archives. These are the packages that you deploy on Apprenda. An archive is essentially a zipped up version of your different application binaries or components depending on what you're deploying. So for example, in the case of this application or this demo, we're going to use the time card 3-tier application. And the reason we're picking this app is because it's the app itself is not exciting, but the architecture of the application is. It's a composite multi-tier .NET application, something that you wouldn't traditionally associate with a cloud platform. But Apprenda understands these sort of applications, understands the dependencies and the complexity of this sort of app, and will modernize this application, deploy it, and make it behave like it were a cloud-enabled application, give it scaling, load balancing, high availability, different things that you would expect from a cloud application. And it really showcases the power of the platform. Now, from there, you can deploy all sorts of different components. You can deploy Java web applications. You can deploy different .NET type components. You can deploy Docker containers and Kubernetes pods as well. Apprenda allows you to deploy all sorts of applications. And you'll see different archives here. Some of them might not work in this demo environment. So if you run into an issue, just feel free to reach out to us. But we'll do for the purpose of the demo, this 3-tier .NET application. So you can click on the zip link. It'll download the archive for you. I already have it, so I'm going to go and skip that. And just go to the developer portal. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create my application. Let's call this time card demo. Just give it a name and an alias. An alias is unique across the system, so if it's already in use, just pick a different alias. And I'm going to provide an application package, or I can simply copy the link from the POC portal. So I can do that. I can go here, find that archive, copy the link, and just place it here. Makes it simpler for deploying the applications. And in the case of a continuous deployment, you can have your build server, put it in a job location, and just pass that to the Apprenda environment. As long as the Apprenda servers have access to that, it will be able to grab the application and deploy it. Now you see Apprenda scan the application. It's actually telling me and warning me as a developer that my app has a static variable, and it might not behave in a cloud environment. In this case, it's okay, but this is Apprenda trying to understand the applications and the architecture of the apps and being proactive to let developers know you might run into an issue. In this case, okay, I'll click X. And Apprenda is going to take me to the configuration page. I can configure the application in a variety of manners on the Apprenda platform. I can enforce authentication depending on whatever the environment is using. I can configure different deployment options for this environment, like operations or properties that the operations team has made available that might dictate where my application lands. For example, if you have infrastructure segregated for PII data, operations can just simply create a property, just like the one you see here, that says PII, and depending on the value of your answer, the environment is going to deploy the application in certain infrastructure. It's going to filter out things that don't match it. I can configure things like the URL type. I can provide my own vanity URL and then provide a vanity SSL certificate for the load balancer. I can configure things if I have, for example, session state stored in memory. Now, that's not a cloud-friendly pattern, but there are a lot of existing applications that do. So Apprenda makes it very easy by simply backing that with our distributed cache so that you don't have to change your application right away. You can take advantage of cloud environments and deploy it on Apprenda and still get the scaling and the portability that you would expect. And then you can configure the application at the component level. This is a multi-component application. It has a website, it has a web service, and it also has a database, all going to be deployed by Apprenda. So in that scenario, you'll see that I can configure what's called resource policies. These are essentially Apprenda will deploy each component in a container. It's going to containerize each component. And this is essentially container sized. Operations gets to create a menu of different container sizes that I can use. So if I click on that arrow, you'll see for the different components, there's different options. So by default, it picks small. Let's say I want a medium for my web service, and I want a small for my website. Let's leave that as it is. Click yes. It's going to deploy, and every instance of each container is going to be deployed with that characteristic. So I'll go ahead and I've configured a lot of what I want. There's a lot more that you can do, and I invite everyone to go through our documentation page or some of the different tutorials in the POC portal. But we'll keep it very simple for this video. I'm going to click Promote. Promote is the actual deployment of the application. So Apprenda is going to go through a series of steps to deploy the application. It's going to start deploying the website, the web service, the database, configure the load balancers, configure the internal routing of this application so that this composite multi-tier app each component can identify and talk to each other. Now, if you have a simpler application in the sense that you're deploying a microservice, of course, the deployment process is a lot quicker and it's simpler for Apprenda. There's a lot of that you don't even have built into your application if you're building more cloud-native components. In this case, I purposely picked a more complex application to showcase the value of Apprenda. So after it goes through the series of steps, I'm essentially going to get a URL that's already deployed on the environment, and I can access the application. So if I go back to my dashboard, you see this application is now in Sandbox. It means it's running in a sort of intermediary step where I can test it, deploy it before I make it ready in a production manner per se. I'll click Launch, and you'll see this is the application up and running. It'll load it for the first time. And here's the application. I got my URL. Didn't have to really do anything. I'm not touching servers, VPN, IP information, host names, remote desktop, none of those things into the actual application. You see, the L, and we'll do, CTO, and we'll hit save. And this is actually going through the service and the database and storing that information. I can then go back to the developer portal. Click on the Monitor tab. You'll see the 3 components deployed across the environment. Again, developers don't see servers. They don't see any of that information. They just simply see their components in an abstracted way. I can look at utilization coming out of my application, for example, in real time for each of my different processes or instances, and then I can scale it. Apprenda makes it very simple to scale your applications. There's 3 different modes: manual, automatic, schedule. Let's say that I'm going to deploy my UI to 3 instances, and I want my service scaled to 4 instances. And so this is going to go ahead and scale my components independently of each other, each with their own container size, across the infrastructure. If I go back to the monitor page, we're going to start seeing these different instances pop up, and there's no disruption to the user. It's all being done automatically behind the scenes. The load balancers are being reconfigured. And Apprenda is going to start to enforce this. So if there were an issue with the infrastructure behind the scenes, Apprenda is going to detect that and move the application, do it all automatically, try to minimize any sort of downtime from a user point of view, and really decoupling the developer from any sort of infrastructure or operation-centric workflows or solutions like server patching, management, deployment, and things like that. So Apprenda makes it very simple to deploy, manage, scale your applications, and that's what we want to show you here in this demo for the Oracle Cloud, running Apprenda on that infrastructure. Apprenda can be run as a platform. There's a whole other side of this, which is the operation side of Apprenda, that allows you to configure the infrastructure, and I'll show you. You won't have access during this demo lab, but I will show you what that looks like so you have an idea if you're researching Apprenda what it is. You'll see that the operations side of Apprenda is where you can go ahead and configure and manage the actual resources behind the scenes for the platform. This is where the operations team can see the infrastructure powering this Apprenda environment. You'll see that in this case we have a combination of Windows, Linux, and Kubernetes cluster attached to this Apprenda environment, which makes it very easy for me to deploy different types of components, different types of applications. Operators will get to see all of that. They can configure policies, configure the resources, etc. And Apprenda allows you to run this on bare metal infrastructure, virtualized infrastructure, really giving you a lot of flexibility in how you want to run and manage the application. I'll show you behind the scenes what that application that we deployed actually looks like. If I search for time card, we'll see the 2. This is the one that I deployed right now, this time card demo. So if I click on that, you'll see the components of the application. And what might actually be happening right now, and this is you're going to run into this depending on how much you're scaling. Because this is a demo environment, we've actually put some limits on the amount of resources that you can have. And you see here, actually, the platform, I try to scale too much, and the platform's telling me that it can't scale it. There's some logs being thrown by the environment because we've put limits to ensure that everyone gets a very smooth experience. So if I just simply go back to my scale tab, let's make this a little bit easier. So we'll go back to 1 for the service. I'll just go back down to 2. So let's go ahead and do that, and that will actually let me deploy the different components. So very simple to use, very simple to deploy applications. If I wanted to deploy, let's say, applications or a containerized workload targeting Kubernetes, you can see here in the proof of concept, the POC portal, we have, for example, an Nginx K8s YAML definition. The same if I wanted to deploy a .NET Core application, I can simply provide that YAML file to Apprenda the same way that I just deployed this app. So if I go ahead and let's say if it's going to let me scale at this point, I already have an application, so it might. Okay, so the UI did scale. You can see it. So what I'm going to do lastly before we wrap up this quick demo video is go ahead and deploy that Kubernetes workload just to show you what that process is. You'll see that the simplicity is a lot of the value here as well. So delete this application just to make sure that I have enough resources to deploy this new workload. And there's things that are a little bit different when you're deploying, for example, Kubernetes pods, right? The resource policy management is different, and the target environment behind the scenes is different, but the workflow that as a developer you'll go through is the same, and it'll simplify a lot of the workflows for deploying applications to Kubernetes, for example. We'll create the service resource. We'll create the different replica sets and things that you need. So if I do here, let's do Eric Cates, and I'll provide this YAML file. So copy link. In this case, it's just a YAML file that I'm providing for my Docker container. So this is a lot quicker because it's just uploading that probably 1 or 2 kilobyte file instead of those full binaries of the application. But the experience is basically the same. The only difference that will change from this point of view, from a components point of view, you'll see that it doesn't say website or web service. It's just basically pods right now. So I have a different resource policy that applies to pods because Kubernetes restricts resources in fractions of cores instead of actual CPU allocation. So we have different resource policies that apply to Kubernetes components. But I'll go ahead and click promote, and what this is going to do is it's going to go contact the Kubernetes cluster behind the scenes, pass it using the API, pass it that YAML file, deploy the container. It's actually going to start aggregating logs so I can change the log level on this system in the monitor tab, and I'll show you where that is. And I can actually grab the logs from the deployment, the logs being thrown by the pods. Apprenda is going to aggregate all of those logs and show them to me in a very easy-to-use manner. You see it's pretty quick. The application is now running in Kubernetes. So if I go to monitor, I'll show you where the logs show up. They're right here. Because we configured basically 2 replicas by default, that's what we have here. So I can update that. The logs, in this case, none of it showed up because I have it in a log level that's pretty high. But if I drop the log level by creating an override, and let's say put it in debug, it's going to start showing logs coming from the pods and Kubernetes. So make it very simple to deploy and manage your applications, whatever the application patterns or architecture and languages are. Apprenda really allows you to manage in a simple, self-service, abstracted way these components from a developer and developer agility point of view. So hopefully you'll give this a try. Try to deploy a few things. If you run into any issues, again, reach out to us at oracledemo@apprenda.com. We'll be sure to get back to you, look through the different resources that we've made available, that POC portal, different things in the demo lab page and in documentation. And again, hope you enjoy, and thank you for listening in.